Hey everybody, well tonight's video is going to be another start to finish work, and I figured I was going to do some cloud work in Vue for this image, and also we'll spend a little bit of time in the cloth room in Poser. So it should be fun, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to open up Vue and we'll select an empty scene. Now I'm going to just do a few quick settings here. I'm going to keep the ground because that's going to work with our lighting model. I'm going to go actually into the atmosphere editor and select the standard spectral lighting model and let Vue pick the settings. And over in light, make sure we have global radiosity on, and that's what the global radiosity is going to basically turn everything into a subtle light, including this ground, which will make the ground kind of work like a fill light. Sky fog and haze, I'm going to turn the decay color down to about 40%. And set the aerial perspective up to 10. Alright, for the sunlight, I'm going to soften it up a bit. And we're going to make sure the volumetric lighting is enabled as well as lens flares. And for shadows, we'll set it down to around 85%. Turn off this shadow map. And set the softness quality up to 1. And for the camera, I'm going to set up as a 70mm. I'm going to pan that up so the ground's no longer in the scene. And one last thing, I'm going to take the sun and move it into our scene down about here. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to just throw in some clouds. Do that through the atmosphere. I like to do it through the atmosphere editor. Clouds. And if you click this little thing in here that looks like a piece of paper, you can it'll throw some clouds in. In this case, it throws in the dark cumulus layer. If you don't like that particular setting, you can click here and select something else. I'll stick with dark cumulus though. And you can see here it completely obscured the sun. First thing I'm going to do is it sets it up at 824 with a dark cumulus. That's way too heavy. And you can see here just setting that down makes a huge difference. Now I'm going to also set the cover down though to around 40%ish. And that's actually giving us a pretty good scene. I think I set the cover down a little too low. Let's set it up to 50%. That's looking pretty good. I think there's too much sun in here though, so let's put another cloud in to obscure it just a little bit. So we'll hit OK on that editor, and let's just create a cloud. We'll create a meta cloud. And that's this circle with an arrow here. It lets me pick one. I'm going to pick a cumulonimbus. I'm just going to drag it down so it's kind of where the sun was, but hopefully not. We're not going to block the whole thing out. Might have to kind of experiment with moving it around here a little bit. And that looks pretty good. I think I'm actually going to get rid of the lens flare on the sun. So let's just turn that off. All right, that's looking like about where I want it. I think I'm going to stop here and jump over to Poser. So we'll save this off and then go to Poser and create a character to fit in our scene. Okay, so here we are in Poser, and I've loaded the Victoria 4 model. We're just going to use her for our scene today. She's going to be covered in a dress that we're going to put in the cloth room. So it's not overly important which character we use. Any female character will work. I like this one the best though. Now, since I'm going to be using the cloth room, I'm going to jump up to frame 20 in the animation sequence because the cloth room works on the animation set of frames. And you want to start from the neutral pose and then go to somewhere in the middle range, 20-ish, and that's where you want to do your pose. And the poser will kind of fill in the motion in between. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So first thing I'm going to do is, just like I said, I'm going to give her just a quick pose like she's flying in the air or falling. I'm not going to do a whole lot. Like we're going to be looking at her from behind. Let's twist this here. Kind of making her arms look back like she's kind of falling a little bit. Maybe put those hands up a bit. kind of like air is hitting her from the front side. And that should be enough right there. All right, so what I'm talking about, if I were to go stepping back through the frames back to 1, you'll see she kind of goes, the poser has filled in each of those frames in between to kind of gradually move her into that position. And that's what we want for to use in the cloth room. So what we're next going to do is add the dress. And for that I have one. Let's I have that one somewhere in my library. Let's see if I can find it. I believe I have it under Tip Hall. Here we go. And this one's actually a 2-part. So I'm going to start with the under part, which is a skirt. And you see it fits right on her right there. And now, so it's just going to be falling. She's going to be getting hit by a lot of wind. So I'm going to add a wind force in here. So to do that, I'm just going to go up to Object and create wind force. And there's our wind force. And then we'll just move it into place. Let's do a side camera here. And put it on our move tool. And we'll put it up to about here. And now you see these white lines, they kind of indicate how powerful the wind is. And you see it's not reaching her, so we need to increase the power of the wind. So to do that, we'll set the range up here to, let's say, set the range up here to 2. And now those white lines pass by. Let's make sure they get the whole thing there. And we'll go to the cloth room. Now we're just going to create a quick simulation. We don't need to do any drape frames. I do like to have the cloth self-collision check. That means the cloth won't be passing through itself. I'm going to clothify. And we're going to select that skirt prop. Click clothify. And collide against. Add remove. And we're just going to add Victoria 4 in there. And hit OK, and calculate the simulation. And it's going to take a few minutes probably, so you can sit back and wait. Okay, so the simulation is finished, and you can see now that her dress is kind of being blown backwards. So I'm going to go in back to the pose mode, and back to frame 1, and I'll add the second part of that. And it's a little hard to see what's going on here. See if I can find a different camera. Maybe that'll help. Alright, now I'm going to make this one a little bit more fluttery in her arms and stuff. So the same wind force will work. I am going to, however, set up the turbulence to 1. I don't know if you can set it up higher. Now 1 is the highest, so we're going to set it up to the highest turbulence. We're going to go back into the cloth simulation. And we'll create another simulation this time. Same thing, cloth self-collision. Hit OK. Clothify. And we'll select that. I believe it was dress 1. Clothify that. Collide against. Add remove. Victoria. And let's make sure that that skirt prop is included. No, it wasn't, so we got to include that too. Hit OK. And then calculate that simulation. Okay, so here's the result of the both the wind simulation or the cloth simulations. I think it's a little too straight here, so I'm going to actually undo those. I can do that just by hitting clear simulation on each of the sims. And go back into the pose mode. Okay, we still have the wind selected. I'm going to up the amplitude, I think, to we'll set it to 4. Set the range down to maybe 1.5-ish and the turbulence down to like 0.75. I mean, that's all you can really do here is kind of experiment. Once you've done those settings, go back to your cloth simulation. Be sure you're on the first one and calculate. And then when that's done, I'm going to calculate the second one. Okay, so here we are with the simulations finished. And this is a little bit better. It's still kind of pointy here, but I don't want to spend all night testing out various settings on the wind force, so we'll just go with this. I'm going to go back into pose mode. We'll give her some hair. In this case, I have something I've picked ahead of time. It's hair I've used a couple times before. It's nice and long, and it has some settings that make it look like it's being blown back in the wind. So I'll just add that. Let's see, we have the Victoria 4 cap. And this is conforming here, so I have to conform it to the figure. And this one has a headband. So. Alright, so I'm going to select that hair. And I happen to know it has a nice pose, set of poses to it. This is one of the ones where you have to inject the morphs before you can do the poses. And I'll have a link to this in the notes of the video so that you'll be able to get this yourself if you want it, or you can use any other kind of hair. And this even has some nice preset poses. Try that one right there. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to save this off. Just save as, and we'll save it to our folder on the desktop. We call it flying. And we just give whatever, and we can just give it whatever title we want. We'll just call this flying as well. How about flying girl? All right, and now we'll go back to Vue. Okay, so now we're back in Vue. We're going to import that character we created in Poser. So to do that, I'm just going to go to File, and we're going to import an object. We'll go up to the desktop where we had that, where we saved that off, and here's our character. When you get this question, you just click no. And here's another question you might get. Also, click no to this. Okay, now this is important since we use the cloth room in Poser that we don't just go pick the first frame. We're going to import a single frame, but we want it to be the last one from the animation, which will get the cloth in the position that we wanted it. So click OK there. Alright, and then we're going to move our character into the scene. It kind of plopped her down sort of in the middle of nothing here. Kind of want to position it so it looks like she's kind of falling or flying. Not really sure which. I'm going to try to position her about 1/3 of the way from the edge. Actually, let's... I forgot to pick a good aspect ratio for this. Don't like the television aspect ratio. We're going to go with the... we'll go with photo. Actually, let's go with... yeah, photo. A photo will work good because it'll fit in an 18 by 24 frame, so it'll make a kind of a good sized print. Or a good aspect ratio for prints to fit in standard frames. Now our character's looking a bit on the dark side here in the preview window, so let's light her up a bit. And to do that, we'll just add a light. Kind of position it so that it looks like the sun is shining on her. And I'll reposition her just a bit. Trying to put her in the composition so she's kind of works with the sun. She kind of balances out the sun. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let's do a preview render of that. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so I stopped the render a little bit earlier. It was beginning to take a pretty long time. But I have to let it go long enough so you can get an idea of what it looks like. I'm just going to make a few quick changes. It's going to tilt her at a more of an angle to make it feel like she's really like moving, really falling. And the other thing is I was going to go in and change the color of her dress. I don't like that blue. I'm going to make it red. Let's see what other materials we might have. We have the skirt, fly. Copy that color and then just go to everything else and paste it in. Okay, so what that's going to do, that's going to make her really stand out. I mean, so when somebody's looking at these thumbnails, they're going to see this red spot, and that's going to kind of totally jump out in the scene. Sort of a trick, I mean, for art to use a spot of red to draw the viewer's attention. So I'm just going to use that. Let's move it down just a little bit, put in the composition the right way. And the other thing I was going to do is just add another light nearby. I'm going to go back to the 4-pane view for that. Throw in another light real quick. And this is just going to be kind of a fill light. I'm going to pick a darker color for it, just like sort of a grayish, greenish, bluish color. This will keep her the side from not being so dark, the side that's against the shadow side of her. Soften these up maybe a little bit. Alright, so one more quick preview render. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so I think I'm liking this, and I'm going to send this to the final render. Now, it's taking a really long time to even do preview renders. That's one of the problems you have with clouds and atmospheres and stuff, is that your renders start to slow down. So I'm not going to render this one too large. We'll set it up to, let's say we'll just do a final render to screen. We'll set it to 3000 by 2000. That's large enough to do some prints from, but not overly huge, so maybe it won't take forever to do a render. So I'm going to kick that off and come back in a little while to see how long it takes. So the render took a pretty long time, even for a somewhat smaller image than I'm used to doing. But with all this clouds and atmosphere, things like that are going to take a while. So this is the image. I saved it off, and I've now loaded it up in GIMP to do a little bit of post-production work. Not that much I'm going to do here. I'm just going to experiment around a little bit with some of the colors and such. I'm just going to go up to the curves and maybe just see if I lighten some of the lights and darken some of the darks, if that looks a little bit better. It doesn't really make that big of a difference in this case. Maybe we'll pull up those mid-tones a little bit. And that gives it somewhat of a brighter look. Maybe we'll test out the saturation a bit. Let's see, hue and saturation. Let's see what the saturation looks if I turn it up. That looks kind of good, actually. I kind of like the way that makes a difference. I turn the saturation all the way up. It gives kind of a sunset look. And I think I'm just going to stick with that for now. Like I said, I wasn't going to do a whole lot of post-production on this one. This video was mostly about the just sort of creating a fantastic sky in Vue, and then maybe a little bit of work in the cloth room in Poser. So I'm going to save that off, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you out some. So thank you, everybody, and good night.